So, hi everybody, and welcome to the very first episode of Schooled In. My name is John Lunn, aka Jonnychipz, and in this video series, we take a deeper dive into some awesome cloud technologies. I'll be joined by fantastic people from out in the tech community who've kindly taken some time out of their day to come and school me in a particular tech topic. So, whether you're watching this on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, or LinkedIn, thanks so much for tuning in. It really is appreciated. Please do take part in the chat below. Drop us a comment, a like, and a subscription would be absolutely fantastic. Okay, so in today's tech world, we are surrounded by automation, conversation, social media, as well as work deadlines and milestones, all to be achieved. So Microsoft has recently launched a product called Viva that aims to bring all of these and more together to foster that culture of bringing people and teams together to be empowered to work at their best from wherever that may be. So I'm super thrilled, if I could speak properly, I'm super thrilled to be joined by Microsoft 365 Solutions Architect, MVP, and member of the awesome GreyHatBeardPrincess Podcast, Mr. Kevin McDonnell, who today is going to school me in Microsoft Viva. And hello, Kevin. How you doing?
Not too bad. Fantastic to be here.
Oh, no, thanks so much for giving up your time. I know this is you've got the honour of being my first guest on this new YouTube series called Schooled In.
It's so exciting. I've only just found out I'm the number one. I think some of my teachers, if they knew I was being a teacher now, would be absolutely appalled. Hopefully I can educate you nicely.
I'm sure you will, Kevin. I think it's more about what the student is going to be like in this instance. So, I apologise up front. But hey, look, we're going to look at some really cool tech today. Microsoft Viva. It's something that's I'm very new to. So, really excited to get stuck into that. So, before we do that, do you just want to give yourself a little bit of a brief intro and let me know when you're ready to go?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I've come from a SharePoint world. I started back in. Was it 2004 was my first project around SharePoint, starting the collaboration, having been a grad at an investment bank in the UK, was introduced to this tool that was kind of there to helping people collaborate, get things done. And I was hooked from that point. I loved that you can enable people. I'd done bits of development, it was kind of self-taught back in the world of ASP and spaghetti code and the fun and games there. But I love that with SharePoint, you could allow people to create their own thing. So it soon became a bit of a career for me. Worked my way through various financial services organizations, and then about 5 or 6 years ago took that hop over to the consultancy. I kind of realized that within all those organizations I was doing consultancy to lots of different areas, so I thought why not, let's jump over the fence and give that a go. And now working at CPS, head of practice for modern workplace, so dealing day in day out with Microsoft Teams, still getting a lot of SharePoint, but the big thing we're seeing growing is Microsoft Viva, and I'd say it's the thing that really caught my attention as well, and we've been passionately sort of building more around it there as well, and going out for myself, Office Apps and Services MVP, so going out in the community, sharing as much as I can about what you can do with it and why you really should care.
No, and when you mentioned about doing a talk on Viva, it was very much one of those, obviously products that I'd heard mentioned. I work for a Microsoft partner, as I'm sure you do as well, Kevin. In that sense, that you hear that there's quite a lot of buzz going around at the moment about Viva. So, look, without further ado, should we just jump straight on in? I'm really excited to get started and understand a bit more about what Viva is.
Fantastic. Yeah. So for those of you, apologies if you are slightly anti-slides. There are a few slides in here, but I'm going to try and keep it. And Johnny has promised he's going to interrupt me and keep coming up with those silly questions. He's going to be that kid at the back of the school throwing the classroom, throwing bits of blue tack at the teacher when they waffle on too much as well. So I talked a bit about myself there. And kind of that experience that I just went into on things. So do reach out if you're interested. Oh, that's a horrible phrase. I keep promising myself I'm not going to use that. But at Kev McDonald, I'm Kev McDonald on GitHub, /Kev McDonald LinkedIn. So do connect if you want to hear more. But let's get on with what Viva's about. Now, In terms of Viva, the key thing is there are at the moment, 4 pillars to this, and it's all about being that employee experience brand for Microsoft. And I use that term brand quite often because it's not per se a brand new product. It's not bringing in something else. You're not installing this next to Teams, next to your Office suite. It's actually embedded primarily within Teams and within SharePoint as well. So you're surfacing a lot of this content through products that people are already using. So your change in adoption isn't so big. You've got a new app down the left. Yep, you've got things there, tabs you can add along the top within Teams. But if you're using Teams already, you're familiar with those things. And those 4 different pillars really start to talk to different areas of that employee experience. So for connections, it's all about building that connection with the organization to people there, building connections to different areas within the org. We've all been through the joys of the pandemic, and maybe certainly for us, and we've found a lot of our clients as well, that you've got that connection between your team, the people working together on a project, your kind of hierarchical business team, but maybe you've dropped off. The people you bump into in the office suddenly start to drop away a bit more, and that's where a lot of those connections come through. And you're also not necessarily seeing your company brands. You're not seeing those inspirational posters. Some of you may be thinking, yes, thank goodness I can look at my Lego collection instead, but you're not kind of reinforcing that purpose as an organization. And Connections tries to help build that understanding of those purposes on there. Insights is all about productivity and well-being, and so it's about looking at your own personal productivity. For those who've gone from being in the office, commuting, whether it's by train or by car, you've got that kind of step away moments for it where you can sit and ponder the day. Now it's about the virtual commute, trying to make sure you wrap up, you don't kind of sink to going into the kitchen table and carry on working, doing a bit of thing, carry on working, trying to make sure you've got that proper separation as well, and thinking about your day and what you've got tomorrow. And then on top of that, you've got what was workplace analytics. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, that you've got those manager and leader insights, so you can see what's going on across the organization, get those buzzwords in a very secure and aggregated way that you don't see individuals, but you start to get that feeling. So as a CEO, previously big offices, you could wander around, see what the buzzword is. Are people working too much? Are they kind of feeling too stressed? The point of Insights is to try and get those triggers in a digital way as well. Topics, I'll be honest, I know with kids you're not meant to have favorites, but Topics is absolutely my favorite because it's all about knowledge management. It's about surfacing all those bits of knowledge that you've got in Microsoft 365, and hopefully soon a little bit wider than that, and being able to bring the right knowledge at the right time through to people. So getting that expertise and being able to share that and surfacing it through to people. And then finally, learning. This really does exactly what it says on the tin. This is about learning. It's about that growth. It's about the skills gap that we see in organizations, but they're trying to address it from a kind of micro learning point of view, trying to take little snippets for those and bringing that together. So all of this surface through Teams, surface through SharePoint. Johnny, you said at the beginning, you kind of heard a lot about Viva. And I think to me, that's the most exciting thing, is that people are seeing these things as this brand and pulling a lot of existing things together into one place and putting the employee at the center. That is the key to all of this Viva stuff.
Yeah, I guess it's like you're saying, Kevin, then at the start, when you first started, for me, I suppose in my mind, it's like, well, what is Viva? How does it fit in? It's not this thing that you install. It comes somehow bundled into my 365 experience. So, look, I'm not going to chip in too much now. I'm going to let you crack on, but I'm sure you're going to try and show how this is bundled in. I'm sensing a lot of AI here, Kevin. There's a lot of AI on the go.
There is a lot of, you know, it's funny, Microsoft had that phrase everyday AI a few years ago, which I'm kind of glad they've stopped using so much, because I always got my tongue tied a little bit around it. But I think that is what Viva is a lot of the case. It's bringing through those fantastic Azure services, and they're using a lot of those behind the scenes, but not showing that to people. So I'll go through, you know, I'm sure there's lots of techies listening to this who want to know, but what actually is it? Stop giving me the waffle. Viva Connections. The cynical among you may go, is this just SharePoint? And I couldn't lie entirely and say no. Viva Connections is primarily bringing your SharePoint intranets, but embedding that within Teams and bringing in a few more bits of functionality. So you can probably see on the right-hand side some of the dashboard. These, for me, are the most exciting thing about Viva Connections. bring it into Teams is no mean. I was about to say no mean feat. It's a wrong word, but it's really important because it keeps people in that flow of work. One of my fellow MVPs, Zoe Wilson, she always quotes that when in her organisation they brought in Viva Connections and they saw a tenfold increase in the engagement in their intranet, and that's not just looking at the homepage. That's browsing through, looking at news articles, liking, commenting. They just found that by putting it in Teams where everyone's working already, you started to feel that connection a lot more. Whereas when it was in the browser, what everyone does is, there's the homepage. Right, now I need to go to Google, I need to go to Bing, I need to get to the services I'm going to do, the Azure portal on there. By putting in Teams, people were seeing it as more of a place to go to as well. But the other element, the really kind of interesting one from a developer and integration perspective, is this dashboard on the right. You can't necessarily see that so well on there, but this is about bringing together the other tools within your organization. So, for example, you might be using Concur for expenses. I know that's very popular. You can bring in you could say a widget that will actually show here is your kind of current expenses that you need to book. Here's what you've got in there, and it will show that as a number. It's not just a quick link, it's a live view using the APIs to pull that data through. Or it could be your leave booking system. Here's when your next bit of leave is. We all know we're kind of holding off to having that day off. You can bring that into dashboards, and it's all personalized, so you will get things that are relevant to you, your role, where you sit within the organization, where you physically sit. You can all personalize both the news elements and those dashboards to get the things relevant to you. So it's all about trying to, again, it's about those connections. It's connecting you with the tools that you need to do your job and kind of linking into you to the important bits from that. And people have been building things for this within SharePoint for years. To have that as a first party citizen is fantastic.
I was going to say, Kevin, so is this predominantly meant for those businesses that may have built up that intranet in SharePoint over a good period of time, potentially, that they can just service that in Teams? Or could, say some company has got another intranet-based product that they're using, could they service that as well, or are they two separate things?
So it does need to be surfaced in SharePoint. So this, if you're using other intranet products, this isn't the one to surface it. Obviously, you can add those as apps within Teams and get some of the functionality, but you don't get the same deep level of connection. You wouldn't get that same dashboard capability. This is very much for having a SharePoint intranet within there.
No, understood. It makes a lot of sense. Like you say, when you're talking about those widgets and servicing those other connected applications into that intranet page, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I mean, you could surface the other bits of the intranet as some of those widgets and kind of have a relatively low weight homepage. Generally, when we've had conversations with people, we've kind of chatted a bit, and they've gone, "So, we're paying for this already, and then we're paying for this other intranet." Well, actually, yeah, we could probably bring a lot of these things through, and it could be a phased approach. So you could bring your kind of initial news and those dashboard elements through on the homepage, and then gradually roll off the other intranet on there, or even retain that ongoing. But I think it all comes down to money and a lot of these things. So trying to save on licenses and make the most of the license you got. And it's probably an important thing to say with Viva Connections. If you've got your Microsoft 365 license, you've got Viva Connections. You're not having to pay any extra for that, which is great.
Nice.
And I think the other story, you can see the mobile one there, is a lot of this about the frontline worker. So bringing these news articles, these connections with those apps to people who primarily out there on the go, whether it's kind of people on the shop floor, people working in factories who wouldn't be connected to their desktop quite as much. They're all included in this as well. So you've got your Teams app within there, and there's a very quick quick app that brings those dashboard, brings those news things all there in a feed to try and help people who aren't always connected to a big screen. Oh, my voice is going now.
So those frontline workers, or those first line frontline workers, they can actually use the Teams client on their mobile device and surface. They are like first party citizens, because I know a lot of the time people out in those kind of shop, like manufacturing shop floor workers that aren't necessarily sat behind a keyboard and desk all the time, they can now get access to company information through their devices.
That's
right.
Right.
Saying that. Cool. Very nice. Very
exactly.
Nice.
And it builds those connections, because
I'm going to say it makes so much sense. Makes so much sense. Connections, of course. That's what it's all about.
Exactly. I know I keep hammering on that word connections, but the reason is because that's where they're kind of targeting these things, and it does bring everyone together as well.
Very cool.
So Moving on to the next one, which also makes sense, is around topics. It's about those topics of knowledge, and this one is particularly AI. Talking sort of buzzwords and things you may have heard. So you may have previously heard about Project Cortex. This is kind of the implementation of a large chunk of the Project Cortex. There is SharePoint syntax as well. It's all about extracting information from this. What Viva Topics does is it looks across your Microsoft 365 estate, and it looks at the key things you talk about, and it will extract those topics. So, for us as a consultancy, we talk about the other Microsoft 365 implementations. You could have financial services. You've got the products you offer there, manufacturing. You have the products that are being created that get talked about a lot, and it recommends these as topics. And you actually get a dedicated page. It looks pretty much like a SharePoint page. You can add your own web parts and content to it, but it extracts the information out, and it'll pull out the name of that topic. It'll even look at alternative names. So if it sees, if you put things in brackets, or even your kind of 3-letter acronyms for things, it will automatically identify a lot of those. It will pull the key people around it. So you've got those kind of experts that are identified, but also the AI will kind of suggest people. And what I've seen with this is that you bring together that kind of manual curation of saying, yep, these topics are right. Yeah, that's not quite right. Let me edit that. Yes, this person's the expert for that. I'm going to make that person the expert. They will curate that and just take the suggested files and say, here's the ones that the key ones. If you think about, you've got all that content that's coming through from search. It will get the popular ones, but it may not always be the popular bits of content that are most useful. So you've got that manual curation to kind of promote things up and just add that validation. But what we see is that so much of that AI surfaces things through, and you make it apparent to people. And the other thing I love, the APQC, the American Productivity and Quality Center, they talk about knowledge management, about putting the right knowledge to the right people at the right time. So generally, if you've got your massive SharePoint estates, you've got all your files, all your stuff in Teams, hopefully you've organized things a bit, but over a bit of time, I know there can be some great governance plans, but you kind of remember, did I put it in this team? Did I put it in that channel? Where were the things going on? This kind of wraps through that. So it's not just about searching for those topics. You can hopefully just about see a kind of card on the screen at the moment, and someone in Teams has mentioned Project SOAR, and it has automatically identified that word SOAR and highlighted that. So you can hover over it and jump into that. So people new to the organization, who don't know what these projects are, who don't know what the acronyms are, they can hover over those and go straight into the detail. And that will appear in Teams. Okay, I'll be honest at the moment. At the moment, that will just appear in SharePoint. Coming in March and April on the roadmap is that's going to be coming into Outlook as well, both the web and desktop, and then Teams as it's showing here, that you'll have that deep integration in there. And people don't have to actively kind of highlight those topics. The AI is identifying and picking them up as well. So it really brings together those different things.
Is this kind of like a switch on and forget? Because I'm assuming that there's mechanisms in place that we can, prevent certain types of content if there's confidential documents from being surfaced into the AI and the scanning tools and things like that. But I saw you kind of say yes and no. But so there is some kind of a configuration that you do. And is it just scanning things like, office documentation, PDFs, pictures, conversational chat between people? How far does it go?
So covers that, everything in Microsoft 365. So all your files that are sitting in SharePoint, sitting in Teams, all your chat in Teams, your Yammer, even your Outlook conversations. Obviously, it will have permissioning throughout this. The same with search. You'll only see things that you're allowed to see within there, but it will surface all those different elements. You might just on the screen be able to see the suggested resources there, and it's got a now. And for those who are big fans of ServiceNow or maybe hate it with a passion, might recognize that as the ServiceNow logo. So coming I haven't seen it appear on the roadmap, but I know it's been talked about at Ignite and other ones, is going to be that ability to connect to third-party systems and ingest data from there as well. And so you can see from the one there, it's talking about ServiceNow, but being able to pull your own connectors to that as well. So where you have your knowledge, I know ServiceNow's got its own knowledge base. I'm sure and in fact, there are many other great knowledge base ones on there. You can build your APIs and we'll be able to ingest that content as well.
So, I mean, to try and, like, in layman's terms, what Topics is doing then is it that it's using all the content that's in your 365 tenant and it's associating it with certain keywords. And then when you're producing more content through chat, it's enabling people to highlight those particular words or acronyms
it's doing it automatically.
Is there any other way that Topics get serviced, or is it purely in that kind of chat interaction or text interaction? Is it between?
No, so there is a topic center, as they call it, where you can go and you can browse through those topics.
Okay.
I can jump ahead and show in a minute. In fact, let me bring that slide up. It's got a bit more detail on there. Not that one. This one. So here is a topic page. You can see showing within there. This is adoption and change management. It is a SharePoint page. I can add images. I can add additional text within there as well. Here's my pinned people. I always try and describe this as like Twitter. This is your little blue tick. This is defining, yes, this person is the expert. And this is, you kind of, you talked a second about, would it all be automatic? It can be. We tend to find, as with most AI systems, that you want people to be able to add a bit more information to that as well. So those pinned people will add there, and you can sort of see the pinned files. Taking that a little bit further, you'll go through and bring that. I'm just trying to see if I have. No, that's just the extra ones on that one. Slightly lower on the screen when you have the real one, there's a really nice graph type view that you can see the connected topics. So if you're looking at adoption and change management, you might want to see the kind of propositions for adoption and change management, or you might want to see how to do adoption and change for Microsoft 365. You see a connected graph between those different things that you can browse through. Plus, if you search, any of these pages kind of becomes a top level bookmark, so you see those things appear in search as well. So
I'm with you.
3 different ways. You've got that knowledge center where you can kind of browse through those topics that exist, and generally we recommend clients to kind of build out that initial, I don't want to call it a hierarchy because it's a graph. It's not necessarily a kind of leveled hierarchy, but you can connect in and browse through that way. So browsing through your knowledge, searching for that knowledge. But then the reason I always talk about that highlighted one is because that's the most powerful one that people see. It brings that information about it when you need to see it as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. No, that's cool.
So really, like, as I say, it probably comes across a little bit. I'm a little bit obsessed with topics because I think, to me, I hate the fact that all that knowledge, all those chat conversations kind of get lost almost. And this really helps to bring those across as well. And even Yammer, where you've got that great Q&A functionality. I know many people out there will be going, ugh, Yammer. Some of you going, yay, Yammer. But the Q&A functionality that I absolutely love. Things like Stack Overflow, you can ask those questions, you can mark them as best answers. You can do that with Yammer, and that will get pushed through into topics as well.
No, that's very cool. Like you say, it's there's a whole heap of ways that could be used then and surfaced to help people either get to the information they want to quicker by highlighting it in a word or browsing through the topic page, as you say. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, sorry. I can't get through the other pillars a little bit quicker. Viva Insights, this is a fantastic one. There are 2 levels to this. You can see the main one with a big happy smiley face. It's got that headspace integration, so you can have your daily moments of mindfulness within there. And this is intended to look at your own kind of productivity and well-being within there. So it's got great things about their focus plan. I'm sure I think you mentioned in the intro, Johnny, about the emails that you get from Viva. They have now been rebranded Viva Insights because it's trying to look at the things you do. So look at where you've promised to do things in email. It will put the highlight those and say, have you actually done this? Do you need to make this a task? Can you tick it off? It's just that little nudge with things on there as well. The focus time's another great one. We all know that we end up in back-to-back meetings and never get any time and end up at the end of the day doing work. Then focus time kind of looks at where you might have space over the next few weeks and blocks out that time in your calendar. A top tip with that one, also rename it so inscrutable project managers won't look at that and go, focus time, fantastic, I can book a meeting over that. So renaming that one can also help within there as well, and that makes sure you have time to actually get work done as well.
And in my experience, it's been switched on in the tenant that I use for my day job. And like you say, these emails kept popping up into my inbox, and they were saying, "Look, you promised to do this," and it's like, "You're right, I did. Oh, better do that." So it's very very good that it'll pick out those. Let me send that to you. I'll come back to you next week, and it's kind of surfacing those in a more kind of structured way, I guess.
Yeah. That's right, and it's another way of accessing into those things. And the other one is one-to-ones. I'm sure whether you manage people, whether your manager, is always that kind of good thing at the end of the year when it comes to appraisals, like we'll meet on a regular basis, but then it starts to drift, and suddenly that regular meeting happens to coincide with other calls and things like that. This really just helps surface that and say, how much one-to-one time have you had with your manager? Have you had with your direct reports? And just it gives you that little nudge and saying, yeah, maybe it's time to start chatting to so-and-so a little bit more within there as well. So that kind of personal insights, that's included within your license, really useful. The smaller image that's on the screen there is about the workplace analytics. And this is where you're looking at managers with departments and the whole organization, and looking at that same level of insight, but looking at that measurements. The kind of bubble chart you can just about see there looks at that connection between different teams. So it's showing where you've got those kind of where people are chatting, whether it's via Teams, email, working together on documents, having meetings together. It uses all those input points to kind of look at that. So you can kind of see if you end up with lots of very large blobs, but very few connections between, it means you've got a lot of silos within your organization that you may want to address. It means you haven't got people necessarily working well together as well. And it's that kind of thing, looking at burnouts, looking at how much time people spend in meetings versus actually getting some work done, how much time people spend after hours. There's a fantastic thing, if you look up the Viva Insights playbooks, there's a lovely set of PDFs that recommend the kind of measures you can get from that. So really interesting insight. And what I've kind of really seen this be useful is where you think you have issues around employee engagement in the organization, and you're kind of coming up with these initiatives. Viva Insights, the premium version, allows you to measure the effectiveness of those. So if you're feeling that people are burnt out, you want to have less after hours work, great. Benchmark it where you are now, put in your initiative to kind of discourage people, do things like instead of sending an email in the evening, allow that send later so it goes through in the meeting, so you're not interrupting other people, in the morning, so you're not interrupting other people's time, and then see how that changes things over time. So it's getting that measurable insight into things as well.
No, that's clever stuff. Absolutely.
And the next one, and there's a little bit of AI in here, just to keep you happy as well, Johnny, is Viva Learning. So an important thing for Viva Learning, a lot of people think this is an LMS, this is a learning management system for it. It's not actually an LMS in itself. It will wrap around other LMSs. So whether you're looking at LinkedIn Learning, things like Coursera and many other ones on there, it will kind of pull all those courses and give you one place to go to look at that. And it will also understand what people around you are looking at. If you go for the premium version, it will allow you to put things like your own videos, your own SharePoint, your own kind of PowerPoints and things like that as training materials. Allows people to like those, recommend playlists to other people, and builds a lot of things around that. So it really wraps and makes it easy to have one place to go to get your learning, and looks at uses the AI to kind of understand people like you that you work with on a regular basis. Here's what they're doing. Maybe it might be useful for you as well.
Okay. So I'm starting to see then. So Viva in its entirety is kind of built up of these 4 core pillars of functionality or features, I guess. Are they all licensed in the same way, Kevin, or are they all kind of interchangeable, that you can have some and not others, or is it just a blanket license across the top there?
So they are all licensed independently. Viva Connections is the only one that has no license requirements, just your Microsoft 365 license.
Okay.
For Insights and Learning, there's a version of it included, the gateway drug, you could call it, that kind of gets you into there, that you get some functionality, but not everything. So like the Viva Insights, that personal insights you get, but you don't get the organizational, the departmental leader view of things on there. That's a licensed one, and that is and the same with Viva Learning. You can get, I think it's the top 125 courses within LinkedIn Learning. You get the Microsoft Learn content. You get your learning pathways, which teach you about Microsoft 365. That's included in the standard version. If you want to bring in your other LMSs, if you want the rest of LinkedIn Learning, then you're talking about being the premium, and also with that, the ability to create playlists and share with people. And Viva Topics is licensed. You either got it or you haven't. For the licenses, it's all per user per month. So you're, depending on who's using it, you have to license them up. And like with Viva Insights, if you want to measure people, then you're paying for them. There is, as of Ignite last year, now an all-in license. So if you bring in the whole Viva suite, then you will get all of those. And up till I think it's the end of August, there is a reduced price for that. And Microsoft, if you're listening, I really recommend continuing that a little bit longer as well, because I think that will really see some benefit from there. So the more things you get a slightly better license on it. Which brings me nicely to the next screen. The next Viva pillar is going to be around OKRs, objective key results. So Microsoft bought ally.io. And if you get that all-in license, then they have said that will be included as well. They haven't got through the full license model on what that's going to look like. But I imagine we'll be seeing a similar sort of cost of those per user per month. I never like to talk full numbers, but it's fair to say at the moment, the standard list price for the UK is £3 per user per month for each of those individual licenses. And then that wraps up to £6.80 if you go for that all-in license, and you'll get ally.io thrown in with that as well. So this really is, again, it kind of fits with that employee experience. It's understanding the purpose of the organization, because you kind of get your objectives, the organization, they should then cascade down to your individual objectives. So you know what you're doing is actually feeding into the whole organization, that you're not just doing Microsoft exams for the sake of it. The reason for doing those is they help the organization learn on these things. That's one of their key objectives. So it gives a lot more visibility, and it tries to move people away from that kind of once a year. Let's do the appraisals, let's do all this, and then forget about it on there as well.
Yeah, I suppose it's building in those good practices for everybody, like you say, for the individuals to kind of keep on top of their own learning, their own well-being, their own kind of insights that they're getting through. But equally then that premium SKU is for the management chain, I guess, to kind of do those overarching changes to the business to try and have some kind of an effect. Okay.
That's right. And mention those things there. Now, I want to sort of start wrapping up the presentation and have to have a bit more chat, but because a lot of people sort of say, why Viva? Why bring in all these different things? Yes, you're talking about employee experience, but what's the overall vision for this? And I like to think of it as saying that Viva makes it easy to do the right thing. There's so many things in Viva that we know we should be doing. We should be booking out time to get things done, but we don't. Viva Insights makes it easy to do that, because it pops you and saying, oh, here, you haven't booked enough focus time, do this. It makes it easy. I didn't talk about the premium insights, that it gives you that data and sort of, this is the amount of time that people are working after hours. It actually gives you tips as well on, here are a few things you could do to help your team to make sure they're not working after hours as well. So it gives you that advice of doing things. It brings it together, brings the tools with Viva Connections and that dashboard to bring the tools you use day in, day out, slap bang in front of you with the data that you need to kind of get things done. It brings that knowledge in front of you at the right time. It helps you learn, gives you that information about learning that's available easily from all the different places, and kind of even recommends the sort of training that be easy to do. So it pulls all those things together to make it easier for you. And that's the biggest thing I see with Viva, is it really makes the things we should be doing already easier to do.
So, I mean, one of the obvious questions that springs to mind from my perspective is, having seen that, and it's a great way that you've explained that now, Kevin, it's making a lot of sense to me. But from a personal privacy perspective, from an employee point of view, do they have any control of that, or is it some mandate policy that needs to come from the business to the employee to say, look, we will be using your metrics and your email in this manner, or can employees opt in a bit like saying, yes, I'm allowing that to share or that to share, or is that, how does that work, Kevin?
Always a fun conversation, especially when we work with organizations working in Germany and the Workers' Council there. Always a fun one, that. There isn't an opt-in built into the system. So you can license people. When it comes to Viva Insights, that's the one that really kind of takes in all those trigger points on there. So that's the one particularly that kind of surfaces that information as well. You can be licensed or you can't. If you're not licensed, then it won't be surfacing that data. If you are licensed, it will. But there's not built into that any surfacing. So we often recommend to clients, if you have people that are concerned about that, for one thing, be very transparent about what it is it's doing. Be very transparent about the facts. You are going to be doing things with those data. I mean, the honest answer is all this data is being captured. Whether it gets surfaced through Viva Insights, it is in there somewhere in a database in the vaults within Microsoft. So that data is there, whether people are doing something with it or not. And Microsoft will not touch that data. It's there. The important thing to say with Viva Insights is that it does not include any personal information. It takes that data, but then removes the names. And you cannot look at anything without looking at an aggregated way. So there's a minimum number of people that it will aggregate that data. The default for that is 5. We often recommend organizations to increase that even further depending on their size. So you're not seeing that data about any individual, and you can't slice and dice it to get down to see what one person's doing. So you're already hiding that. It is not intended to look at a single person and say you are working too much after hours. It is intended to say this department has too many people working after hours, or this department has got too much focus on meetings. So it is very much designed to remove that individual element, and it has got security around that to make sure that you can't get to that at all. And we have looked at it to try to make sure, and it does really hide those things out the way.
Well, that's good to know. No, that's brilliant, Kevin. Really is good to see. Have you got any more slides now to go through, or are you wrapped up on the slides? I'm thinking.
No, I am slides, but open to any other questions or things on that. As I say, maybe one thing to say is if you want to know more about Viva, I think it's Microsoft.com/Viva. A great place to go to is also the Microsoft adoption site. So adoption.microsoft.com/Viva has a whole load of materials. We're talking on GreyHatBeardPrincess about exactly this, that there's so many materials that can help you understand what you need to do to roll it out, getting it out to people. And that's security conversation around the Viva Insights. There's some really good materials to help the discussions around that as well. So really recommend people looking at that for it.
No, absolutely, Kevin. I think what we'll do, we'll put all of those links in the description below so people can get straight to them. But to be honest, Kevin, you've answered all my questions as we've gone through there. That's been a super chat over. I've learned a lot now in the last half an hour or so, just understanding what Viva is. It's those 4 pillars, soon to be 5. There is a licensing model that you can license individuals. Did you say it was which tower did you say came as standard? Was that the
So the Viva Connections is included.
Connections.
Yeah.
So Connections comes part of it, but then you can license the others on a piecemeal, or you can go and buy an all-in license, which is cool. So it's always a good fun chat when it comes to licensing. I don't know. I miss those days with 365, to be honest, Kevin.
Well, you get the Azure. How much is this going to cost? Which is even more painful in many cases. So.
Yeah, go like that, something like that, isn't it? But. Yeah. Kevin, look, this has been a fantastic first show of Schooled In. I think it's true to say that you've schooled me in Microsoft Viva, so can't thank you enough. Anything more to add before we wrap up this video for today?
I think the only thing I'd say is make sure with Viva, you're putting the employee first. Consider what people want. That's what Viva's all about. It's about the employee experience, and that's what matters.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes a lot of sense, and thanks so much for giving up your time and telling me all about Viva today. Thanks, Kevin.
Not a problem. Thank you.
I'll see you soon.